to understand this, we really need to just start at the beginning. In the beginning, we have to start with kind of talking about the creators, the Kunihiro Nasu, or Kinoko Nasu, as sometimes he's called, and Takeuchi, kind of the main artist of the Nasuverse. These guys kind of got together in like 1998 first, right? They started as a doujin group named Type Moon. They first meet Tsukihime, and then eventually its sequel Kagetsu Toya, and then Fate Stay Night happened after that. And then that's kind of where we all started there. But like, this was 98. This is like beginning of the internet. This is like where everything kind of started. And a lot of people don't seem to realize that the reason why Fate and like that art style is so inherently like early anime related and early like internet culture related is just because of literally coming out in that time. We gotta actually kind of take a step further back on top of that, because Takeuchi started off as a mangaka in 1996. He started with a little manga known as F, right? It's literally just the letter F. But then he showed up in Monthly Gungan Wing, which was kind of like a precursor to Shonen Jump. It was kind of like all of that. The reason why Takeuchi is kind of like important is not just because he does Fate art, he worked as a mangaka, whatever. He was involved in Compile, aka Compile Heart as we know it, which, led to the Neptunia series. They were involved with aiding, including like the art style for Bloody Roar. So Takeuchi became kind of like a weird combination of artist face of the internet in that era, which is one of the reasons why Saber and that style of art kind of became so prevalent at that time, because he was just there at the beginning of internet. So between Takeuchi and Nasu, we ended up getting the Nasuverse as a whole. And just because I know someone here earlier kind of made me giggle about it, it's just like, but Persephone, I thought this was supposed to be a badly explained, not a biography about the artist. Me. No. Stop it. I want to at least give respect for them because, hey, these guys kind of made two incredibly massive franchises that people really love. It'd be very disingenuous to talk about like the Nasuverse without talking about them and what they did, because it's just like they foundationally affected anime and internet and combat and fantasy writing and modern fantasy writing and the idea of hiding magic in plain sight. They drastically affected the entire landscape of what anime is. Like you can't actually tell me that some of the power systems and the way things are drawn can't be traced back to Fate in some way, shape, or form. That's just a simple fact. That's a fact, Jack! Understanding this now that we have like just those two out of the way, we got to start at the actual like beginning of this nightmare, being the timeline. The worst part of this entire conversation is just the timeline.
You have been warned.
And if you want to know why I keep calling it the worst part of this is, let me get my reference for this so you can understand just one of the problems for this. Thank you to Draconics814 on Reddit, because this is where I got this original image from. Do you see this nonsense?
This perfect world begins and ends with me.
Like, actually, do you see the nonsense going on here?
Yes.
This is just the Fate side of things.
Oh no.
This is just the Fate side of things. This is why I'm like, oh my god. This is why it's taken so long.
You don't say.
This is not talking about concepts. This is not talking about bullshit that happens behind the scenes. This is not explaining some of the high level like species. No, this is just the timeline, and it's not even the full thing.
But why?
It's not even the full timeline because it's missing one really big piece of information. Everything that happens before the beginning of the first piece of media. Understand that, like I said, this is just so much bullshit that I want to go through the timelines and explain a couple concepts first, because to start this nightmare off, because holy shit, it's a lot. First off, there are something called branches, divergences, splits, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to call them divergences. There are a lot of what ifs that happen in some media that are not complete, and there are what ifs that lead to entire sub timelines, as you see from the chart right here. It's a lot of bullshit. Nextly, there are three high concepts in this entire fucking thing called Gaia, Alaya, and the root. who I'm going to call Gary, Anna, and Rachel. Gary and Anna are the bestest of friends who protect the world, but sometimes like to argue like political parties, except they're only using people to kill each other instead of talking points. Gary thinks we should protect the entire planet, and only natural things should happen and be dominant, you know, like vampires.
Jeez, you look like a puppy. A blonde eviscerated puppy.
And dinosaurs. Meanwhile, Anna says we should become the masters of our environment and scour the planet like a late-stage capitalist hellscape looks akin to Star Wars. Because humans must progress at all costs, right? Right?
Hope that doesn't come back to haunt me.
Meanwhile, Rachel says, fuck it, you guys argue, I'm gonna go retreat in my room and let people come to me if they're actually interested in talking to me, and then I'll give them cool gifts because they said hi. You know, like a weird reclusive goddess. You know, she doesn't care, but she cares about her favorites, but she doesn't care. I hope that explains that relationship very clearly. Oh, and you want to know the worst part about the Fate universe that has killed so many people's enjoyment of it once they learn how it works? Oh, hell no! Let me get close. Let me get close to the screen with you. Let me get nice and comfortable, right? Magic doesn't exist. What? That's right. Magic doesn't exist in the Nasuverse. And you know why magic doesn't exist? Because magic isn't magic.
What? What do you mean magic isn't magic?
Magic isn't fucking magic. Magic, the actual fucking magics, the actual, like, the great magics, as you want to call it, right, are only special powers given by fucking Rachel whenever someone finally pierces all of her goddamn doom piles and depression and isolationism. Say, hi, how you doing? What's going on? Everything else is not magic. You see somebody throwing fucking gems that explode at each other? Not magic, it's a fucking magecraft. Oh, Gilgamesh is summoning pillars of light that home in on people like they're fucking missile. Nope, that's not magic, that's a mystic, because he's from before the time of gods ending in mystery. No, not magic. Super magical looking, but not magic. Oh, it's a great artifact that rips open tears in the multiverse and kills hundreds of universes at once to purify a poor girl's soul using a non-contact way of prisms of light. No, not magic. No, not magic at all. Can't be magic. It has to be explainable. Not magic. They're called mages, but they're not they don't use magic. They're called mages that don't use magic. Explain it to me. Those are the three biggest parts of the nightmare. Before we even get into the timeline, those are the three biggest parts of the nightmare. Divergences, the three fuckheads behind the scenes of everything, and magic's not magic. Going through all the divergences proper, we literally start at 4.6 billion BC. Yeah, that's where the timeline starts. That is where officially the timeline starts. And it starts immediately splitting into two fucking fate. And this, okay, now understand, the Nasuverse has what is called the main contingent point, but this contingent point, we start off at 4.6 billion BC, only matters if it becomes a Fate universe, because the universe is divided into a Tsukihime and Fate. But this one only depends if it's a Fate universe. We get this a concept called the Moon Cell. If we have a Moon Cell, it's an extra timeline. What the fuck? If it's not a Moon Cell, it could be any other Fate timeline. Just to start us off with that nonsense of we already have a split. Oh, and minor asterisks for all of my FGO friends, we are not covering Lost Belts, because Lost Belts are technically pruned timelines. Pruned timelines that were intentionally manipulated and not as a result of actual actions, but based on people within them. Besides the Moon Cell, here's where we start happening to have things that happen in all the universes within the Nasuverse, which is the thing that happened with all of the universes at the same time was when God said, I'm going to kill all of the birds with one stone, hit the earth with a great meteor, which carried Nasu's form of Deoxys, except it's a grass and fairy type that spreads by infecting every single living being on the earth to help reconstruct it. If that sounds bullshit, it is. Bullshit. It is. Nasu's Deoxys is a mushroom that infected everything to reconstruct life. As a result, so meteor comes down, hits everything, and because Mega Rayquaza doesn't exist in this universe, this finds humans and starts super boosting a few of them with mushrooming bits, turn them into priest kings and effectively gods.
Yeah, baby.
Like Tlaloc, Quetzalcoatl, and Tezcatlipoca, the Aztec gods in this case, right? Because that's where it was nearest to the impact, right? Meanwhile, as we go past this time point, up to about, 13,000 BC, somewhere out in space, the machine gods, which are basically alien machines that are gods, start making their way to Earth to try to find a place to land and colonize, like they're the space British, and they can't decide which third world country they wish to invade and assimilate.
We are the Borg.
Lower your shields and surrender your ships.
This literal fleet of machine spaceship god things are the fucking Olympians. At the same time, Gary's involved making fucking fairies. And during this time he's making fucking fairies, he makes a special pocket dimension, literally labeled the reverse side of the world, for them to hide in when they are feeling overstimulated, right? But all they have to do in order to be able to go back and forth between them is listen to Daddy Gary be erased, like the dragons were. Yes, there are no dragons anymore in all of Fate. There are no more dragons in Tsukihime. If they look like a dragon, they sound like a dragon, they're still not a dragon. Just like there's no magic.
Fuck you!
Right? Well, about 12,000 BC, the space monster cult. Now, on top of all of this, right? So you have machine gods coming in, you have space, you have Nasu Deoxys infecting people and turning them into, like, mushroom gods. You have fairies and an invisible version of the world inside the world's shadow being made. Slifer the Sky Titan starts coming down, trying to extinctify the planet from a distant star. And in order to be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna fucking wharf the hell out of people. I'm gonna wharf the machine gods, rip them out of their machine shells, and cast them down to Earth as mortals. All to say, like, you have nothing to protect you. Nothing you can do matters against me. Like, and takes it apart like an ADHD kid seeing the most complicated toy and saying, ooh, I want to know how it works, and rips it apart and doesn't know how to put it back together. About 50% of the world death toll happened. Gary and Anna finally go, nah, our chosen would win, and sends 6 fairies to make a super sword that nobody can beat except the hyper chosen one across all of time and space, and sends them into the past to obliterate Slifer the Sky Titan. Like, you could mix the audio and the visual of Saber going Excalibur with Exodia obliterate, and that's effectively what happened to Slifer the Sky Titan. That's it. And then, because Nasu loves tying in all of the fucking mythology he can, Slifer the Sky Titan here isn't just a corpse on the earth. No, it is the basis of all of fucking Norse mythology in this world. Slifer the Sky Titan is effectively Ymir of Norse mythology. Meaning Valkyries, Gigas, the Norse gods come from Slifer the Sky Titan's body. Because fuck you, that's why.
Where there's a will, there's a way.
Meanwhile, the Greek gods survive their fucking crash landing to the earth by Slifer the Sky Titan, and it ends up becoming who we actually recognize as the Greek gods, like fucking Zeus, Hera, Hades, Poseidon, Hephaestus, all of them, because of this, right? We're still 8,000 years out before AD. We're still 8,000 years out. The world starts healing. We start having everything starting to happen. We start having all of these mythological things starting to happen, all of the stories, all of the creatures, all of this starts happening. At this point, before recorded history, before human recorded history, we now have another fate-based divergence called the Mirror World. The Mirror World appears in a timeline I will not be digging deeply into because I'm not into that lolly shit. The reason I say, because I'm not into that lolly shit, is purely because that timeline has 2 seasons of anime that are basically lolly shit before it was illegalized in Japan, and then a 3rd season that has actually really good story that only makes sense if you watch the first 2 seasons, but I'm not willing to watch those first 2 seasons because of the lolly shit.
Somebody please think of the children!
Welcome to my hell. But basically, it is a story, it is a beginning of a world that is effectively happens that in this version of a timeline, anything that happens in one side of this world has something that's equal and opposite that happens into the other side of the world, which means trauma that happens in one world is good things that happen in the other. Okay, so we have multiple layers of like plot lines that are happening at the same time already, and I'm not even a third of the way into the fucking summary of the timeline.
That's rough, buddy.
From this point on, we are now in recorded history. The record of Gilgamesh, Arash, Nitocris, like all of the history, like mythology that we have recorded, we're now here. The introduction of Van Femme. Would you like to know how vampires are created in the Nasuverse?
No.
They're not called vampire. They're not called that. No. They're called dead apostles. So I'll go through all of this, but basically dead apostles are vampires, and a guy named the Crimson Fucker, that's not Alucard.
Bitch, I eat people!
Came from the moon, made a deal with Gary to stay on the world and be treated as a natural entity, and ends up becoming a true ancestor, basically a proper vampire or like a born vampire, whatever you want to call it. It's just like you never had a human origin, but their job is supposed to act as like the white blood cells of the Earth's biological system. Anna hates them, and true ancestors end up making dead apostles, the real fucking vampires. We are right now in the timeline, still before any of the major Fate projects. We are still before the major split between Tsukihime and Fate. So now, Van Fan becomes a vampire, and history as we know it continues up until 100 BC. So we get to 100 BC. And in timeline order, this is the first of the great magics we discover, and it's called the third magic. Why? Why? We then end up having more characters show up. We have a character who's born, who's the wielder of the first magic after the discovery of the third magic. And then we finally have, right at 1 BC, right before it switches into what we recognize as the modern era, the last 2,000 years of history we've had, the Clock Tower, the Atlas Academy, and the Wandering Sea is all fused together into a thing called the Mages Association. And at that point, we have so many of the public, all the pieces in place at this point. Because then we talk about how random fucking guy in the middle of fuck all nowhere, and by the way, this is the Nasuverse explanation of this, is how on a day, the wielder of the third magic somehow was killed on the day of an eclipse, which caused the stopping of mystery in the beginning of ether, but it's not correlated to any form of divinity or any form. It's Jesus Christ. I'm not even joking. It's literally Jesus Christ died in canon and caused mystery to end and ether to begin.
Jesus wants a hug.
He killed Jesus in storyline, but didn't want to name drop him because he was a fucking coward.
Bitch.
This is the point where the timelines actually split between Tsukihime and Fate. Moving forward, there is a major fight that happens between the Crimson Fucker and my most hated character in all of the Fate universe, in all of the Tsukihime universe, motherfucking Zelrech.
Hello.
I hate him because of him we have all these timelines. Because everything else that I have talked to up to this point is almost fucking meaningless because of Zelrech. In 300 AD, Crimson Fucker comes to fight in a place that sounds like it belongs in Yu-Gi-Oh! Because it splits between Tsukihime and Fate. In the Tsukihime universe, the Crimson Fucker successfully bites Zelrech and turns him into a dead apostle. As a result, this leaves Crimson Fucker alive and allows for the formation of what's called the Dead Apostle Ancestors and the foundation of the Tsukihime story. It's bullshit. Now, leading into Fate, though, it's like, oh yeah, Zelrech completely decimates Crimson Moon by using the all-powerful kaleidoscope, the fucking second magic. Again, first one we're introduced to, third magic. Second one we're introduced to, first magic. Third one we're introduced to, the second. Why? Because of the power of the kaleidoscope lets him literally become immortal and cross dimensions and ignore the rules of space-time and the continuum. He can just now show up wherever the fuck he wants and manipulate time and space. He can even manipulate fate. As a result, he becomes basically a character in the background that you have to wonder if he's involved in every single little storyline and branching pathway. Remember, this is his fault. So then we get to about 500 AD, or 500 to 900 AD. Holy Church and the Mages Associations kind of become opposed. We start then having the Legend of the Round Table. We start having the Clock Tower be officially established. All of that have the White Dragon myth happen. We have the Holy Church. We have all of this. We have the Round Table happen. Artoria happens. Because conveniently she's on the screen. She's her own mess of knowledge. I'm not touching her right now. Around 980. By the way, this is where we finally prove the third magic. Not just that it was recorded, but proven now by a family that exists in every version of the world in the iceberg in the Nasuverse called the Icebirds. They do the same thing in every world, but they don't have the same level of reach in every world. Clock Tower becomes the center of magecraft in 1200, begins to actively start enforcing the concept of the masquerade if you've ever played World of Darkness. And then from that point, we're finally to this. We're finally here. So now let's take some time and let's zoom in on this, right? Because like I said, I'm going to be playing Honkai in the background. we're gonna actually zoom in on this now. We've now finished up our timeline up to this point. We are now, Tsukihime here, comes over here. That right around here, right here in the middle, do you see that? That little line right here in the middle? If you can't, let me zoom in a little bit closer. See where it says Carnival Phantasm? I remember I said I was gonna get to it. That is the one piece of media that is in between Tsukihime and Fate that literally determines whether or not the universe actually works the way it's supposed to. What the fuck? You can see on this list, right? If I bring it out a little bit, we don't really have a lot in the Tsukihime timeline. We have Matsuka no Yoru, which is the Holy Night, takes place in the 1980s. We have what we recognize as Tsukihime, a couple different endings that happen as a result of it. And then we end up having Kagetsu Toya and Melty Blood. Just for context now, just as a gentle reminder, this is how small Tsukihime is in the grand scheme of all this. Everything else is fate. Everything else is fate. As you can see here, we now have the problem of we have multiple timelines starting at the same time as all of this. So here's the problem. We have 3 timelines starting, and you see the tangle that is becoming. Well, this tangle is going to be approached last because the other ones are a little bit easier to explain. Fate Prototype, the original concept. Yeah, Fate Prototype was supposed to be the original concept for the Fate universe. I'm gonna break it down in just a second, but I need to let you just sit there and think. We were supposed to have a female protagonist with a male Saber, King Arthur, and a female Merlin. Then Fate Labyrinth happened, where basically we have a character dream of the prototype group to make it semi-canon. That's it. That's the entire justification for how it's still canon.
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
I'm going to sidestep over to my favorite timeline before I approach the main timeline, the extra timeline, because this one's a lot easier to explain. Moon Cell. If the Moon Cell exists in the world, it's an extra timeline. If it doesn't exist in the world, it's not an extra timeline. That boils down to the simplicity of it.
Did you get that?
There is some things about the universe that aren't really super explained yet, but all we know is a certain major incident happened, and basically Mana starts disappearing from the world. So mages stop existing. Magic stops existing. Fate stops being fate, but it's still fate. Extra gets split into 2 different major timelines after that, right? The extra timeline happens with CCC happening during a weird point in the storyline, and the anime Lost Encore is bullshit. It hurts the lore, but it basically takes the particular timeline that you choose a female main character, choosing Saber, who is Nero in this case, and then you lose in the final boss, and then you repeat this cycle of picking Saber, dying for 1,000 years until you reincarnate as a man with extra superpowers to then manifest as the hatred of everybody who's died in the Moon Cell, to then take over the Moon Cell to destroy it and ruin the plot? What? Yeah, no, I don't get it. Meanwhile, Fate Extra happens, Fate CCC happens, you go on your merry way. Have fun. Do not look into CCC unless you are ready for a very particular type of encounter that I am not legally allowed to talk about on Twitch.
No.
Extella, however, and by extension Foxtail is basically just a version of Fate Extra CCC, except instead of you having chosen Nero, you chose Tamamo. It's interesting. It's fun. It's cute. A lot tamer, and it's a manga. It's not a game. Fate Extella and Fate Extella Link are basically just, what if we time traveled in the Moon Cell to fight Slifer the Sky Titan in a warrior style game? How about that, huh? That sound interesting to you? Yeah, because there's all these versions of the timeline that you have to wibbly wobbly your way through to get to the true story in Extella and then Extella Link. That sound interesting to you? So moving to stay there, I'm gonna preface this with, I know this is called the Stay Night timeline, but you can see it's spider webs out over near me. We've just covered Tsukihime. We've just covered the extra and the prototype timelines. This is where all of Fate happens. This is pretty much all of Fate here. To get us started, we've just finished up with Zelrich. We've just had the Clock Tower happen. We're having the Stay Night timeline start. This starts with Garden of Avalon. Garden of Avalon is kind of like a side story that was happening. It's supposed to take place kind of early on as like the actual story of Arthurian legend. And then technically the first Holy Grail War happens in the 1800s, right? And Holy Grail Wars are kind of like the big thing that everybody recognizes from Fate. 7 servants summoned to take the Holy Grail, all for the chance of granting their wish from their life and with their masters. Understand that. That's the basis of Holy Grail War. Third magic was then lost. How do you lose magic? Did you like put it on a shelf in ADHD object permanence it?
Yes.
How did you lose it? Your family studies and owns it, basically. So the third magic is officially called the Cup of Heaven by their family. Anyways, during this time, the trio families decide that the Church and the Mages Association are fighting like slighted lovers. They sneak away to the Far East, Japan, to create the Magecraft system that we recognize as the Holy Grail War, using alchemy, haunted as fuck ley lines, and a super necromancy to summon dead people from years and years and years ago.
You know there's zombies on the prowl.
This is supposed to happen every 50 years. Remember that number. 50 is important. As a result, and the leader of Justice Liesrich von Einsburn, I am going to put respect on her fucking name because goddamn, she sacrifices herself to become what we recognize as the Greater Holy Grail, or the Greater Grail as some people abridge it to, which was created from her body while Zelrich watched. He was in the room. After that point, the trio families then start to become masters, getting making the command seals, summoning servants, and then we find out what happened in the First Holy Grail War was like a minor quarrel, and it was ended before completion because the mages that came here were only there for the ritual to make their own grail and not actually to participate, so it fucked up. Well, then the second Holy Grail in the 1860s, the bloodbath with no actual rules and no victor, and then the church gets brought in to be arbitrators. So then we get the third Holy Grail War that happens in 1939, and oh right, did you know in 1939 Japan joined Germany and the Nazis? Yeah, we have a split in the timeline right now. So during this Holy Grail War, which is known as the Third Holy Grail War, we have the main split, and the reason why the Fate Stay Night games fuck up so badly. Because during this Holy Grail War, the Imperial Japanese Army and the Nazis, yes, the Nazis.
It was the Nazis, wasn't it?
Tried to claim hold of the Grail as mages, and while all this is going on, the Icebergs are getting big mad. Especially on the fact that they're losing out on claiming the third magic so much, that they then say, screw the rules, we're the magic makers. And then summoned the Angry Mango. Or as some people would recognize him as his official name, Angra Mainyu, as a forbidden class, a class that should not exist at that point, up until that point, known as Avenger. He was weak as fuck, absorbed by the Grail, and it permanently fucked the Grail up. And if you guys don't know the story of Angra Mainyu, mythologically, it is the story of a village who basically attributed all of the world's evil, greed, hate, corruption, murder, whatever you want to attribute as evil, to a singular person, and then said, you deserve all the abuse in the world because you are the representation of that person, even though that person was completely innocent.
Why?
This now new form of the Lesser Grail was then destroyed in the conflict, rewrote the ritual, and completely allowed certain shit to happen that should not have been able to happen at that point. Because remember, the Grail was only supposed to summon heroes, good guys. As a result of Angra Mainyu, we now have the reason why they can summon villains, monsters, anti-heroes, storybooks, and other non-historical entities like characters from actual stories of mythology that never actually truly existed. At this point in the divergence, we have 2 additional versions of the Third Holy Grail War that actually ends up happening. That was the canonical main Stay Night timeline version of it. The version that actually got its own anime is known, one of them that got their own anime is called Apocrypha. The Apocrypha Grail War is where Germany successfully takes the Holy Grail War ritual back to Germany, back to Europe, but changes the rules to be a way that people on both sides of the war could technically engage. This is when we have 16 servants summoned, 7 in red, 7 in black, with each having a side having a ruler, basically a judge keeper, because the church really couldn't participate at that time, right? Ruler was summoned by the Icebergs and didn't fuck up the Grail in this timeline. But we haven't seen really the results of everything after Apocrypha since. Takes place in Trifas, Romania. That is this branch here. The other one that happens is known as Koha Ace, as the comedic version, or red line. But okay, and I'm gonna say this is a big but. Any of my FGO players would also recognize this event as the Imperial Capital Holy Grail Strange Story, also known as Gouda Gouda 3. Breaking this down a little bit, it is a version of the Holy Grail War that takes place during World War II in the Imperial Capital of Japan, right? And instead of it summoning like what we expected, we end up having these stories of, we have Okita Soji's Saber, Oda Nobunaga's Archer, and Morinaga Yoshi's Berserker. It is I almost said China because Imperial Capital doesn't usually get involved with Japan as a phrase for me. At that point in time, I want to make this clear, this is a version of a story that we have as a manga that is ongoing and is holy crap so cool. Moving down the timeline, welcome to Fate Zero. And I know, it says Witch of the Holy Knights right here. It's a weird part of the problem of the timelines where technically the remake intersects with Fate, even though the original did not. I can't really explain that one because I haven't played it to tell you. Fourth Holy Grail War, Fate Zero. Please watch Fate Zero. If you haven't watched it, I'm going to go through it in the funny way. Daddy Kodamene sends his son Mappo Tofu, aka Kirei, to go fight for the Grail War and play Kingmaker to the Tosaka family. He lost his servant assassin during that and says, hey, I'm a sociopath, and killed Daddy Tosaka. And then took his servant Archer, Gilgamesh, the biggest bastard in all of Fate, and said, by the way, specifically Archer Gilgamesh, and then watched as the best polykill in the anime gets started with Irisville, the homunculus that has the Lesser Grail hidden in her body, Kiritsugu Emiya, Daddy Shiro's daddy, and Artoria Pendragon, aka Baber. Meanwhile, we have a Psycho Killer match up with the caster with the tentacle cultist ideology, and the best duo Waver and Ryder going, I am Iskandar, King of Conquerors, become a thing, all while dancing around each other in a careful manner to follow the rules of a church that means fucking normies can't see what's going on.
I am just a figment of your imagination.
You know why I'm going into depth about this one? Is because we actually have a storyline for this one. We don't have so much information on the others. Meanwhile, Lancer is accidentally seducing his master's wife because he has a fucking curse on him that causes him to do this. Because fuck you, you're pretty and it's a curse. And Berserker getting big mad as usual, except this time it's Lancelot. And so if he grabs his cock, it becomes his noble phantasm. You know? You have to understand, it becomes metal as fuck. And Brittany's even bigger mad because Artoria's here. As a result, this causes all sorts of massive clashes that cause lots of death and destruction that totally didn't, and people who died and definitely did not deserve their fate. And a few major things in motion. Namely, one in this Holy Grail War, the Fourth Holy Grail War, the Grail was fully corrupted by Angermanyu at this point, causing it to drive whoever would be the winner slightly insane by seeing the effects of their ultimate wish. This is where Kiritsugu has infinite division works happen and saying, oh, what's the greater good? What's the greater good? How many times can you say the greater good before you actually kill everything? Which then causes him to go, hey, Saber, you're going to destroy the Holy Grail. Hey, Saber, you're going to destroy the Holy Grail. Hey, Saber, you want to destroy the Holy Grail? And she's like, no, don't make me do it. I don't want to go. And searing that trauma into her very soul. Secondly, it then causes the Great Fire of Fuyuki, which killed 500 people, destroyed 134 buildings, and was the effect of the cursed blood that then allowed Kiritsugu, Kirei, and Waver to basically survive, while also giving Gilgamesh a brand new body that's not tied to the Holy Grail, so he can torment us 10 years later.
I'm sexy and I know it.
Yeah. And then we get in between Fate Zero and Fate Stay Night. We have, just two fantastic franchises that do not get enough love because, for whatever reason, the timing of their releases just did not match up with anything. The Garden of Sinners and El Molloy II's Case Files. Garden of Sinners came out really, really early in anime's lifestyle, and as a result, we end up having this entire story that covers what we recognize now as foundationally the functions of the Fate universe. This is where we get the discussion of Gaia, Alaya, the root, mana, how people can have supernatural powers without being mages, how people can, have servants, and what are ghostliners, and why are servants ghostliners technically. Literally everything Garden of Sinners is basically, if you want to learn the functions of Fate, that's where you go watch. It tells you so much more than you will ever learn in most of the rest of the entire franchise. El Molloy's Case Files, though, is a little bit of a newer anime, comparatively, but has a hell of a lot more ability to tell you what the shit is going on and like actually like get you invested and involved in the story to be like, hey, you know, there's shit happening, you know? And it helps that El Malloy's case files helps fill in the 10 years between Zero and Stay Night, which is a really important detail. Now, here's the reason why it makes me scream. Because all of this spawns at the same fucking time.
Oh no!
So we're gonna go from least complex to most complex. Tiger Coliseum, down here at the bottom, intersects with the lolly shit. There's a whole set of Holy Grails war down here. Don't worry about it, it's Caelid Liner related. I'm not going into Caelid Liner. Fate Unlimited Codes is a fighting game that tells kind of off the Fate Stay Night branch, and there's enough storylines and characters that you can win the game with that just go play it if you want to find them out. I'm not touching upon them, but they don't lead anywhere. There are 5 routes that lead off of the beginning point of Fate Stay Night. The short one is Archer's Route. You don't see Archer's Route as an anime at the moment because it's never been made, but basically understand it is Archer's Route takes place into this concept of how time travel works in Fate to try to change his own fate to stop him from becoming himself. Yes, Servant Archer, like as in Emiya Archer. It's considered the 5th route, but it's considered the original timeline before Fate happens because it is the version of Shiro that survives the Holy Grail War that didn't know about saving Saber's heart, grows up to become a vigilante, betrays his own ideals to become a counter guardian, to then start going back in time to kill himself. That's the start of that. That's the start of the reason why Fate happens. Now, understand. I want to get nice and close again. This is how he starts. He keeps the memories from this point on through the other branches here. And even into FGO, he time travels that much at this point as the same entity, regardless whether he lives or dies in them. This is how Archer knows shit. So now, here's where we're going to get the problem. 2004 happens. This is not 50 years later. This is 10. This is why it's bad, because this part causes a lot of divergences outside of the Stay Night ones that I just covered here. We have the Ilya, Muse World, the Caelid Liner stuff that I'm not touching. Fate Requiem, which is where multiple Holy Grail wars also happen in the same world simultaneously, all at the same time, and every single person gets a servant in the world, like it's fucking Oprah going, you get a servant, and you get a servant, and you get a servant.
You get a car! 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 Everybody gets a car!
And then proceeds to also have Grand Order only have the first Holy Grail War technically happen here and only ever once. As of this point, we now need to actually start talking about what Fate Stay Night actually entails at this point. Because if you don't, everything else falls apart. Starting this off, Fate Stay Night is split into 3 routes. Rin, the Stay Night route, which is focused on Saber as the main love interest. Rin, who is the Unlimited Blade Works route, and then you have the Sakura route, which is Heaven's Feel. All of these have vastly different information there they tell for the same story, but also have vastly different events depending on who you are pursuing. These are the, in quotations, routes. I want to say routes because even when you are doing a playthrough of these routes, you can actually still have, because these are visual novels, you can have variances in them. Variances that include, does Ilya like you or not? Does Rin like you or not? Does Sakura like you or not? Even if you're not following their main storyline. But generally understand, the simple answer to most of this is, Stay Night says, I want to fuck Saber. Unlimited Blade Works says, I want to fuck Rin. And Heaven's says, I want to fix and then fuck Sakura as a puppet. I'm also going to say something a little controversial because it's a personal theory of mine because of how messed up this section of the story of the timeline is. Unlimited Blade Works is the canon route, but it is the only route that logically makes sense to have the stories continue on. It is the only one that has the results of the world happen for Hollow Ataraxia to continue on with, and subsequently Strange Fake. And the reason why this matters is because, and this time, this is one of the things I have issue with this this displayed timeline here, they all put it along Hollow Ataraxia's line. Problem with Hollow Ataraxia is that it acts as an amalgamation of all 3 endings of these Stay Night storylines and mixes them in a way that does not lead to a canonical understanding of the world. Understand?
No.
You with Ashiro go around, help Saber, connect everything, have a happy ending. Saber gets her wish that she gets to... Saber doesn't get her wish, but she gets to stay. Shiro gets to go, I'm a hero. I'm happy with everything. And everybody gets to stay alive. And everybody that died from the events of the Holy Grail gets to come back. And we're all happy. And everybody lives happily ever after. And you get the very cute stuff like today's been your family. Archer is big mad because he didn't think of it. And he's stuck there. So he time travels again. Unlimited Blade Works, as I said, is the canonical route. Rin actually teams up with Shiro, actually gets close enough to understand what's going on. Archer, now with the knowledge of what happened in the Stay Night route with Saber, goes, oh god, we need to get out of here, Rin, and changes up how things interact, how certain battles happen, and ends up resulting in Shiro figuring out how to use Kancho and Bakuya, his fucking iconic swords, and the Unlimited Blade Works against Gilgamesh, setting him up to be Archer in the future, which is what Archer did not want to happen. So he time jumps again. In preventing Shiro from becoming Archer, he has to protect Sakura, or rather not protect Sakura in this case, which allows for some really, really dark and deranged shit that happens that you could only go watch in the movies, and I'm not going to discuss here, but it results in her losing her fucking mind and being consumed by the shadow. The shadow is so powerful that it turns Saber into an altar by yeeting Saber from her and causing Shiro to bond with Medusa and ending up with the jeweled sword of Zelrech being used by Rin and her being persecuted as a criminal by the clock tower.
What the fuck?
Which means that ending then eventually where Shiro basically dies because he gets Archer's arm grafted onto him to save his life, ends up causing so much damage to him that he has to have his body remade as a puppet by Aoko Aozaki. It's fucking wild, but that also means he basically can never leave Rin or Sakura's side ever again because he constantly needs an influx of mana that he cannot generate himself anymore. This is why Unlimited Blade Works has to be the canon route. After that, we end up scooting a little bit further in the timeline to something that's not really covered here, and it is a sequel series known as The Adventures of Almaloy, which basically covers the adventures of Rin, Shiro, Almaloy II, aka Waver from Zero, where they actually basically just continue the storyline up until the dissolution of the Holy Grail ritual as a whole. That's it. They dissolve the Holy Grail War. That's it. That's the end of Fate.
That's all, folks.
How great is that? How great is that? You don't have to worry about, all of this down here. Did you think I was going to forget about the nonsense that Grand Order brings?
Maybe.
We're going to start in just a moment, but I want you to understand. FGO is isolated from every other timeline at this point, other than the fact that the Holy Grail War happened once. Specifically, in the early 1800s, was not happened there. In fact, it happened in 2004. Only happened once. The actual splits that happen here are not actual splits. It is mostly to give you concept of the context, because what ends up happening is they time travel. They bounce around times. In order, they go from 2004's Fuyuki, which the Holy Grail War fucked up in, 1431 at Orleans, which the 100 Years War fucked up, Septim, Rome fucked up, Okeanos, Greece fucked up, London fucked up, and this is, by the way, the Jack the Ripper time. This is not anything else. E Pluribus Unum, aka the Civil War, fucked up. Camelot fucked up by a very specific situation of Camelot and Jerusalem getting mashed together. Gilgamesh found out Babylonia was trying to get fucked up by the villains and said, nah, fuck that, I'll summon the heroes here myself. And then fighting in a place removed from time and space. Then having your base completely decimated, and you have to go do it again in worlds that are trying to overwrite your own. Meanwhile, Fate Grand Order Arcade basically does the same shit in a slightly different order. There's no way to show those splits in a way that will make sense. By the way, but all of it is to correct what happened to the correct timeline. Then you end up having Moonlight Lost Room, Cosmos and the Lost Belt Arc 2 begins, right? Where you basically travel the world and try to be the hero 9 times over, and then, oh, by the way, the God said, you kill too many people 9 times over. you have to sacrifice yourself for the world, and you now have to give up your humanity and no longer exist if you want to fix the world.
It is better to die like a tiger than to live like a pussy.
That's just the timeline, everybody. Here's my problem. So much of Fate is what makes up the foundation of the Nasuverse. So much of it has interesting concepts, and so much of it has fun things to talk about logically. But like, there's so many questions I have about it. There's so many things that I know about it. There's so many things I could literally deep dive into it after today. But like, I've still only scratched the surface for you. And I'm not going deeper. Unless you guys have questions.
No, God! No, God, please, no! No!
Ask me whatever you want.
No!